We're delighted to have today a very special session of the Arabic Hour with very special people. These are students, graduate students, undergraduate students, activists who refuse to remain silent, indifferent to the plight of their brothers and sisters in Palestine, and have taken the risks and all what it takes and organized their fellow students in a stand in solidarity with the people of Gaza and the Palestinian people as they go through a vicious genocidal war, a war trying to erase them from existence, and have made it very clear that they will not stop, they will not resist, they'll continue to resist until justice and freedom for the Palestinian people is assured. They are from different universities, and they have joined their fellow students from many universities in Canada. University of Toronto has been a leading organization where the students established a major encampment that became a central place for people to visit and to express their solidarity and their willingness to stand for the Palestinian people. This was not confined to people who came from Palestine. It became a central area where students and people who accepted their obligation, their indivisible humanity, to stand on the side of justice and to become a voice for the voiceless and to keep the issue on the front burner of history, not on the back burner. And despite all the pressures, despite all the threats, despite all the risks, they remained loyal, committed, and active in what they have done. And they have succeeded in so many respects, and I would like them to express their feeling and their tribulations that they had gone through. We have with me today Mr. Ahmed Kamal, who is a graduate student in Metatronics, a well-accomplished scientist and programmer and in artificial intelligence and robotics from the University of Waterloo. And we have Ms. Nadine Shurafah from the University of Toronto. She's preparing herself to enter the medical school. And Mr. Muhammad Jabri, who organized the Toronto of Palestine. Muhammad, I have not seen him one day off. It was from the 9th month now, on daily basis, on the streets of Toronto, in every single activity, and trying as much as possible to be the voice of Palestine and the Palestinians, and the voice for the collective humanity that binds us, that is now at risk as they face not only the vicious attacks. As you know, now Harvard has come in an article in Lancet that 186,000, almost 10% of the people of Gaza are at risk of death. And there is really now a very serious situation that despite the world, the United Nations, the ICJ, the National Court of Justice, and all decent people around the world calling for a ceasefire, the onslaught, the massacres continue to unfold on a daily basis. There isn't a single hospital that was not destroyed in Gaza, not a single school, not a single university. The attempt here is basically fundamentally to make Gaza unlivable. And this really has enormous consequences. And these students have not been silent, have not been on the sidelines, have not been indifferent, have risked it all, their futures. And they now have established a very bright spot for all of us and set an example for the rest of us to follow, that this collective humanity cannot be separated. We have all to stand as long as there is one hungry, one poor, one at risk of losing their life, one wounded. And these people have been a living example of this. I'm going to begin by asking Ahmed if you will be kind to tell us what motivated you as a graduate student who was probably very heavily and intensely occupied going through your very challenging program to leave all and to become an organizer, a student leader. And you've gone through so much at University of Waterloo. I mean, you were one of the individuals, 6 or 7, that the University of Waterloo named individually in a suit claiming punitive damages of $1.5 million and holding you responsible for it. Were you scared? How did you really look at this? And has it in any shape or form distracted you, detracted you, held you back, or you continued to be on the forefront? You lived in the encampment. You were in the tent. You were literally living from one sandwich to the other. So, Ahmed, please take us through the journey that you went through. What were your ambitions? What were you aiming for? What did you find? And how did you cope with it?
Yeah, for sure. So first, thank you for having me. And then I guess what started all of this is students have been organizing, not just at Waterloo, but in universities all across the world for months and months, calling on their universities to end their complicity in this genocide. Really, the motivation for students is just a deep sense of humanity, and for Palestinian students, a deep sense of belonging. Um, and for months and months, students have been calling on their universities for, quite frankly, the bare minimum. And universities haven't even achieved that. And that's organizing has been happening in various forms, in different ways, calling on the university to end their complicity. Um, and then uh, with the student protests taking the form of encampments all across the world, universities have started, or students at universities, one by one, started to all form encampments. And the motivation for these encampments really became um, to add a lot more pressure on the universities and their company to have a permanent presence, showcasing and highlighting that this university is complicit in the genocide, and also to add pressure to create an end to this genocide. Um, so throughout the entire process, really what got people together is a deep sense of humanity. We all knew why we were doing this. We were doing this for the people of Gaza. Um, Throughout the time, we were living in the tents. We were living um, at the university grounds. And throughout the weather, throughout all of that, yes, there were hardships, but we all knew that this was nothing compared to what the people in Gaza were going through. So really, that's what motivated us, is um, standing up for the people in Gaza, um, looking for an end to this genocide, and calling it for what it is. We just simply did not want our universities to be complicit in the ongoing genocide of the people in Gaza.
Yeah, but you were not alone in some respects, and then most of the students that were with you, probably a large majority, were not Palestinians, Arabs, or Muslims. How did you feel about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to speak for our encampment. It was really mix of different ethnicities, different backgrounds, religions. It was everyone coming together for the same purpose, just from a deep shared sense of humanity and a deep sense of justice. We were there for justice for the people of Palestine. We had people from all different kinds of ethnic backgrounds, racial backgrounds, religious backgrounds, and everything in between. Um, and even in the lawsuit that the University of Waterloo filed against. So for context, the University of Waterloo filed a $1.5 million lawsuit um, against the encampment to try and intimidate the encampment to well, to drop our protests. And they filed the lawsuit against 7 individuals, and all those individuals were from different backgrounds, different races, which really highlighted that this is not an issue for any particular background or race or particular kind of people. This is not just a Palestinian issue. This is an issue for everyone because the genocide that is happening is really showcasing the effects of imperialism that are highlighted in the specific area, but they affect everyone everywhere. And so people of all different backgrounds came together to stand up for justice and to stand up against it.
Thank you, Ahmed. Let me go to Nadine. Nadine is from Jerusalem. She lived under occupation. She knows what the occupation is. She knows all the viciousness and the measures that restrict the freedom and engender dispossession of the Palestinians. And she has been in Toronto now since 2019. And you automatically and immediately, Nadine, you participated in organizing solidarity with the Palestinian people. So how would you rate your experience? And then comes the Gaza war, and you were on the forefront in organizing students and the encampment at the University of Toronto. Please take us through this journey as when you came in and how did you finally get to be so involved?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, first of all. And honestly, when I first came here, I was super excited, to come to the free world and like to be living around like people from all these different cultures and whatnot. I remember in 2021, like when the war started again, I saw a lot of mobilization in the city and it was really beautiful. A lot of it was led by Toronto for Palestine and PYM and whatnot. And it was really, really cool to see. But then there was also always this part missing at universities. And recently in November of last year, a month after the genocide had started, we kind of came together. It was just a random group of students. There was actually there was a protest at the university for Israel, which was crazy. And it was just a bunch of random students. We came together and I met this one girl and we just kind of mobilized like around like 160 people within like 3 hours. And we went and we counter protested them. And then after that, we loved it. We saw that there was energy on the campus and we were like, let's use this. And we started our organization, Toronto Students in Solidarity with Palestine. And from there, we continuously for like 8 to 9 months, like didn't stop, like protesting every single month, sit-ins, teach-ins, anything you can imagine, occupying the president of the university's building, his office. We did everything we could to get the administration to talk to us and to address us, and it wasn't working. And eventually we were inspired by Columbia and all the other universities across the world and decided to start our own encampment. And it was beautiful. It was a community space. We were surrounded with a lot of love and energy, and just seeing all the support from all over the city was genuinely like very moving, and it helped us survive for those 2 months. And yeah.
You know that, and you brought a very interesting point that this was not just singularly a protest or an encampment. It was teachings. It was trying to educate fellow Canadians and other people of the world to the plight of the Palestinians, to the injustices that they face, to the vicious occupation that has now extended over more than a half a decade and going strong without very much hope that the occupier would yield. And that's why you felt like maybe there is no option but to come to the forefront and continue that struggle. I see that, Muhammad, you are shaking your heads, and you know, you were not only shaking your heads, you were, you know, on the streets every day, and to a great extent, you come with lots of preparation. You're from Gaza. You know what Gaza is going through and the tribulations that they face and the threats, the disease, the hunger. I mean, one of the most vicious things that we have seen that no other experience is similar to it. This is not the Middle Ages. This is, we are in the 21st century, and the occupier is saying and bragging, we're going to deny them water, food, medic, and we're going to destroy their homes. We're going to transport them out of their country. To what extent being from Gaza gives you a special vantage point about what's happening here?
First of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be amongst passionate and fabulous students. We're very proud of our students for making it this far, for making a positive impact and change on the society we're currently in, and more importantly, for giving us the opportunity to amplify Palestinian voices and amplify the Free Palestine movement. Being from Gaza, even though I wasn't born there, or I never crossed a feet in Gaza, there's always this gap between being from there and not being able to go there, and seeing all the people and the struggle and the famine and the hardships they're going through while living and enjoying our lives here. It makes you feel at discomfort that you need to do something about it. When there is injustice, we have to do something. And it came to the point, it was mind-blowing with the double standards around the world, how the entire world dealt with Ukraine, and now, you know, turning a blind eye to Palestine, even though we're going through a genocide and going through an occupation and going through siege. Something needs to happen. And, you know, looking at our society here, I felt like we needed to step up and be there for our people in Gaza, our brothers and sisters, and, you know, our families. Right, we couldn't be there physically, but I feel like we're there spiritually. We'll try to keep and maintain some sort of communication with people there, with journalists. We were able to get in touch with many of the journalists, especially our beloved Wael Dahdouh. Just having that connection with them and trying to understand what's going on directly, pure information, accurate, not any misleading information. Just having all that together, it needed to happen, and we feel empowered by, you know, participating and being that voice for them, and try to support with them as much as we can.
Yeah, thank you, Muhammad. I mean, you raised 2 points which are absolutely important. One is that the West has become totally unable to extricate themselves from these double standards. One of the major things that you students have been able to do is to unmask all this hypocrisy and double standards. And you pointed it out in the most possible way. And there is a parallel event taking place at far less vicious issues in Ukraine, and yet you will find that they just bombed the Russians, unfortunately, a hospital, where children were being housed and where people give birth. And the world was, especially the Western world, was completely riled up, and incredible statements and descriptions came about. But the same is going at a scale that is 10, 100 times worse, and yet didn't. So the idea here is that you guys, one of the things that you have been able to achieve, if there is any way to review your experience and what you have done, you were able to unmask this double standards, and you have challenged it, you have faced it, and you have exposed it. What you also have done, and that's very important, is to establish a link, as you're mentioning here. Dahtuh, you have to tell us a little bit more about this man has lost his kids, his wife, his home, his son. Like the kids, two of them had died before, and then the remaining son was also murdered. I mean, to a great extent, what you are also showing here is that there is an attempt not only to obliterate the people of Gaza and Palestine, but to obliterate the truth, obliterate the chance of those who could possibly bring the truth, especially that corporate media has failed us by being unwilling to expose and to shed the lights on these massacres and these. So you, in a great way, the students here have taken the events in Gaza and were able to unmask the hypocrisy and to create another channel where people, through the protests and what they have done and what they have said and what they have written and what they have spoken, to give it a chance of their fellow citizens in Canada and the rest of the world to see the truth unmasked, the bright way of doing it. Okay, let me go back to you, Ahmed, and say, how do you evaluate your experience? I mean, you went to the Senate of the university. Senate is the academic institution that decides about the academic standards and the academic measures that would really rule the university. And you went to the Board of Governors. These are the two top institutions in the university, because the Board of Governors is the group that manages the finances of the university. How would you rate your experience with these? You were going to the Board of Governors and saying, you don't want to be complicit in this genocide. You're not going to use our tuition and our contributions to aid and sustain this onslaught and massacres. How do you rate your experience? What did you expect? What were you able to achieve? What were you unable to achieve, and why?
I think you actually summarized this perfectly when you said unmasking their hypocrisy. So the university always claims to have institutional neutrality. That's one of their favorite terms. They always claim to be bastions of academic freedom and freedom of expression. Yeah. And through the constant organizing and the encampment, we've uncovered that the university is a complete hypocrite when it comes to those claims. One of our biggest accomplishments was, on top of the community support, the organizing, the political awareness, was we managed to get the university to disclose all of their investments. So when they claim that they were neutral, that they had institutional neutrality, after managing to get them to disclose all their investments, we've seen that they're actually invested in the weapons manufacturers that are directly, materially supporting the genocide. The University of Waterloo is invested in Elbit Systems, they're invested in Safran and Base Systems, who are all weapons manufacturers that are directly giving the weapons to keep this genocide going. So throughout these experiences through the Senate and Board of Governors, it kind of became clear that the university and the university administration um, are really only there for financial gain, regardless of support from students, staff, faculty, and the entire community. Um, the university administration has blocked all the efforts to move forward on the demands past the closed demand. We've had the first ever special Senate meeting that is called by faculty, calling on the university to meet the students' demands. And the administration's response was just naturally claiming the neutrality and suppressing freedom of expression. So much so that eventually, going against their own freedom of expression policies, they sued students for $1.5 million for protesting genocide in an attempt to intimidate them away. So I'd say that the experience overall throughout the encampment has been overwhelmed by the community support, whether that be from students, staff, faculty, or the community at large. It was clear that everyone agreed on those basic demands and that everyone's together asking for, well, what the university claims to already have, neutrality. Versus the response that we got from the university itself has been repression throughout the experience. They called the police on us, they filed a lawsuit against us, and they tried to suppress the movement at every single step of the way in an attempt to cover up those investments, those partnerships, and to shield them from any sort of accountability, and to really not give away any power to students, staff, or faculty.
Listen, I mean, I detect a sense of frustration in the sense that you're absolutely right. I mean, university is supposed to be the arenas of debate, exchange of ideas, and the university has a sacred mission to promote the pursuit of truth and to express the different views. I mean, to a great extent, there is an institution, a university, it's called tenure, where university professors are protected in their jobs so that there will be no threats to pursue the truth that may hurt some and may not be the standard discourse at the time. Do you feel the university has somehow failed you in that? It did not, in many respects, it did not live to the mission and the mandate it usually has in society to pursue truth and to protect those who pursue truth and give them the chance to express themselves and point to these issues. I mean, university is the area where it housed historically critics of society and gave them a sanctuary, so to speak. You feel like to some extent the university has not lived up to that standard and to that mission.
Absolutely. So in the university's lawsuit, they asked the court to establish a complete ban on any sort of protest, any sort of dissent, or any criticism of the university itself, really showcasing the university's lack of care or protection for freedom of expression. Throughout their response to our encampment, really the response was sort of reminiscent of McCarthyism, where the university wanted to suppress any sort of dissent, any sort of critique in a complete and utter manner. And their hard-handed response really showcased how the university does not actually hold any of the values that it claims. And through the university's response, I'd say that's one of the things that really supported the movement the most because it just showed the hypocrisy of the university and highlighted to everyone there that any criticism of the university will solicit a hard-hearted response, and that alone created so much support throughout the university, not just for the encampments, but for the people of Gaza. Because at the end of the day, all the universities um,
Let me bring in Nadine here. Nadine, university is not
the reaction has been an attempt at a distraction. They were trying to just
Yeah, it's all right. Nadine, university is not only the board of governors and the senate. It's also the faculty. It's also the students. It's also the community of parents, friends. How do you feel about the contribution, the position of the faculty and
Yeah.
other components of the university?
So something actually very powerful with our encampment was that we were able to mobilize over 200 faculty members to sign on and to support us, and we're basically ready on call if we ever needed anything. Having that type of pressure has rarely ever happened with the university, to have like 200 faculty members, a lot of whom are tenured, a lot of whom are very respected professors within the community, and having them stand by us. We even had around 12 professors camping with us for like the first few nights, and we're there like almost every single day, helping us with media and helping us like throughout the entire process. To the university, that was a bit threatening, and they continued to show up every single time in protests. They would show up with their robes, they would show up with their degrees, they would show up and just to show the university that you're. And they actually even told the university that if you want to come for our students, you have to go through us first. And having that sort of protection really meant like a lot, and their support helped us like amplify our voices. But it was very important for them to also make sure that they like kept to amplify the students' voices and ensure that this is a student movement, and to give the students the ability to fight their own battle the way they see fit. And it worked wonderfully, and we were able to get to negotiations and whatnot. But unfortunately, we live in a bureaucratic system, and we weren't able to win anything through negotiations. But what we were able to do was get the university to spend hours and hours every day talking about Palestine, something that they'd never wanted to do. We put Palestine in their mouth, we put Gaza in their mouth. We were able to, because of the location of the encampment, we were able to bring light to it. We had Palestinian flags everywhere, thousands of people passing by every single day, seeing this. We were able to stay throughout the entire convocation period. So all graduates, future alumni students were able to see this, to see us protesting. Meanwhile, while we're doing this and fighting for an end to the genocide, our university was trying to go to the courts and get us evicted and get us off their lawn with the simple excuse of, oh, students need to be able to have breakfast and play soccer on this field. And we're like, your priorities are so messed up. Like, we're here fighting against genocide and our tuition being invested into the Israeli apartheid state, and you're here saying you want students to play soccer. So we realized that like it's not a fair system, and you have to really apply as much pressure as you can. And the only way that we were ever able to get them to address us or to address our demands or to even mention Palestine was through this exerted pressure. And one of the days they had the governing council meeting, which also has all the board members, and we requested, because as students, it's our right, and they actually invited us earlier on. We were like, yeah, we would love to come. And when time came, they rejected the offer, and they're like, you're not allowed to enter. When they did that, obviously we got angry. So we rallied people and we made sure to show up there, and we demanded entry, and they denied it. And we actually were able to disrupt the entire meeting because they were not able to get through a single agenda item other than talking about us and talking about Palestine. And the Zionists in there, in the governing council, were furious, and because they could hear us outside, and we're like, this is, you need to control your students and whatnot. But what this just shows is just like when we come together and we get united and we're able to like successfully target, we're able to actually make change, and disrupting this meeting was very important. And yeah, so through like over time, we're able to hopefully continue mobilizing and build connections and build a stronger base, which just gets us closer to our demands, and hopefully one day we'll actually get our demands.
Well, you brought also some very important thing here, and let me re-emphasize it. You students were not alone. The Ontario Federation of Labour, the Canadian Union of Public Employees, the unions have come and stood and said to the police and others, you're coming to dismantle the charter protected right of these people to protest, and especially at a time when that protest is basically and fundamentally organized to protect the sanctity of life and people liberties and freedoms that we all, Mandela said that I don't feel free until the Palestinians are free. And this was a very important thing that you have been able, through your protests, is to bring and mobilize all segments of the societies, especially labor and others who felt an affinity, knowing exactly what exploitation means, and to stand by you. And the other aspect that is also quite important, and you said it, and this is that I know Muhammad was very much involved in this, is to keep the Palestinian issue alive. It's not a Palestinian issue, it's a humanitarian issue. You don't have to be Muslim or Palestinian to feel the travesties and the pains of what's happening there. You were able to bring that collective humanitarian and humanity aspect to it. And that was a very fundamental one. Muhammad, there is one thing that we also need to talk to some extent. Some of the politicians, for their own purposes, and the Zionists, in a way, to disenfranchise us, have leveled the unacceptable, totally unbelievable charge that we are anti-Semites. And what is really interesting, and you know from first-hand experience, that the IJV and Jews for Peace and other groups, including rabbis, have come to our aid. This is not a religious issue. This is a basic infraction of human rights. And you were at the forefront in it, and you have established, and you were, to a great extent, a major organizer bringing all these forces together. How would you rate your experience doing this?
I would want to say the experience is phenomenal. First of all, this is our way of contributing to the Palestinian struggle. At Toronto for Palestine and the greater community here, we believe that our mission has three pillars. First one is to educate. The second one is to unite. And the third one is to empower individuals. And that's all done through local initiatives and strategic actions. Our struggle for liberation and the Palestinian cause, it's all about humanity. It's a humanitarian crisis. And to start there, you're able to unite people and bring everyone together, because at the end, everyone wants to see humanity thriving in our societies, because that's how peace enriches and grows within our communities. To bring and to communicate with other organizations and other communities, from the Jewish community to the Tamil community to the indigenous community, and so many other communities, were able to find that link that connected all of us, which is humanity. And to have that on our side is strong and empowers our movement, because at that point you can't come out of us and say, hey, you're attacking Jews, you're being anti-Semites, you're being racist. When you have Jews on our side, in fact, having Jews that are willing to be at the forefront and to do whatever it takes. Jews literally come to us and tell us, what do you want us to do? Where would you like us to be? What's there to be done? And they're very open about it. There was, if you allow me just to talk more about this, there was a very, in my opinion, a very good documentary called Israelism, and it talks more about unmasking the propaganda that was fed into Jews since they were little kids, and all about the birthright trips. That fueled anger within the Jewish community and made them realize that their entire life was based on lies. And that was a big motivation for them to stand up and step up and join the movement. To have other communities, including the Jewish community on our side, is making our movement stronger, but also easier to achieve our goals. And while we also thrive to unite other communities, it also allows us to focus on the other aspect, which is educating us, because to achieve our ultimate liberation, we have to be self-aware. We have to educate ourselves. These encampments provided the space for us to invite, reputable professors, very, very intelligent thinkers, writers, to be part of these encampments, and also to speak up and teach the greater community. And that takes us to the third pillar, which is empowering us. We empower us through education, but also strengthening the connections with the community, because without having a strong fan base, fundamentals community, we won't be able to defeat our enemy and the Zionist regime and the Zionism overall around the world.
Excellent. I mean, you brought lots of interesting points, but let me say the first one is you debunked by your presence and by the coalitions and by the solidarity with the independent Jewish voices and the Jewish community of peace and those who work for this united collective humanity, the claims of anti-Semitism, which is to a great extent was exploited, used, and to some extent people tried to bring about unacceptable premises in order to mute your voices and to detract from the attractiveness and from the support, the humanitarian support from so many groups in the society who had come and accepted that what you are facing is something that touches them in the very basis of their humanity. And what you also brought about is the idea of empowerment, which is to a great extent is one of the most important aspects of this protest movement, in the sense that we're not going to be afraid. We're not going to keep silent. Yeah, they threaten you with jobs. They threatened people with their degrees. But this did not in any way or shape dissuaded you from continuing or dissuade others. You know, that some of these other groups that are not born into this cause, it is a very powerful thing. It came out to say, look, we're not going to be indifferent. We're not going to be silent. We're not going to be intimidated. We're going to remain wedded and obstinate about our stand for justice and for peace based on justice. And you demonstrated this every day as you demonstrated. How do you feel? And here I'm going to leave it up to you. Jump in whenever you feel right, any one of you, or would like to contribute. there were segments in society that were not as accommodating, supporting. I don't want to use hostile, but how do you feel how the police, how the politicians, how the city administration, how the university administration, to some extent, what you have really achieved here, you expose these centers of power of being complicit or to a great extent unwilling to respond to the humanitarian issues and cause. Feel free, who would like to speak, go ahead. Okay, Muhammad, let me begin with you and then we go through the round.
The first thing I would want to mention that we have to make it very clear to us and we have to keep repeat it so it sticks in our minds so we can pass this on to the next generations. And our enemy today is Zionism and the Zionist lobby around the world. And now we're talking in Canada, it's the Zionist lobby in Canada. The Zionist lobby in Canada has influence over the system and other segments of it, including police, including city councillors, including MPs, businesses, the banking sector, and all of that. Once we understand how our enemy works, we would be able to fight back and limit their influence. For example, there was an article that came the other day by The Breach. It highlighted how there is a secret committee within the hate crime unit in the police forces, and this committee is made of Zionists who are part of the Zionist lobby. Their job is to advise the police in our situation is Toronto Police Services on how they should deal with arrest, and they always push for the maximum punishment. Police brutality is real and it's influenced by such committees and by the lobby. For example, before they would release detainees, they would provide them with a clause that, hey, you're not allowed to go to the encampment anymore. And that happened to many of our marshals, our community members. In other cases, they pushed the limit and they said, hey, you're not allowed to go to the protest anymore. You're not allowed to be in a close proximity of the other individuals that you were arrested with. All of that is because they want to limit our involvement. They want to suppress us. And when such committees and when the lobby provides monetary support to the police, they push them to suppress us more. So this is an obstacle an obstacle for us to limit our engagement and our advocacy. And in another section or segment of our society is MPs, our member of parliaments. These are individuals that should be representing us as constituents, as citizens, and they should not be motivated and influenced by anything else. A very clear example in the United States, and which is related to our community, is how AIPAC, they provide monetary support to these MPs, and they support them to win seats in parliament to further their goals in the society.
But Ahmed, sorry to interrupt you, but let me say that at the same time, and we have seen it now, we have MPs who stood by us in a very strong way and in a very effective way. I would mention Nikki Ash. I would mention Matthew Green. Mentions, a large number of the NDP and even the party itself has taken a position to stand by us and to protect us. So, to a great extent, despite all the influence, despite all the resources that they have, there is still within this society, and we should note it and should be proud of it, that there are people who, despite it all, have stood by us and remain our voice, and allowed us. And this is part of what we call Canadian way of things. I mean, it's a charter right for us to protest. And whatever people try to prevent us from exercising this charter guaranteed right, they were violating Canadian law and Canadian values and things. And despite the fact that these people have influence and have power, have resources, have failed from getting us. And one of the major reasons why they failed is people like you, because you have refused to bow your head. You have refused to accept the threats. You have resisted all their methods and pressures. And you should be proud of yourself. If there is one thing, I would take from this, and I'd like you to maybe expand on it, is that you succeeded. I do not feel that the injunctions that asserted the university property rights is in any way, shape, or form a detraction or a failure on your part. On the contrary, there are lots of professors. I'm a professor. I find it extremely unacceptable that the universities are treated as private institutions or businesses whose property right trumps, intercept, contradict charter rights. All right. And you guys have proven that. We, as a professor, I would say thank you, guys. You stood for what a university is and should be. And that has been fundamentally a major plank of your motivation, mobilization, and objectives. Okay, Ahmed, you were threatened. Like they wanted you maybe to leave your program to do things. To what extent have they succeeded? And to what extent do you think you have succeeded?
Um, I'd say the university's attempts were all at intimidation. Um, the reaction was trying to repress our movement, to repress student protesters. And one of the biggest ways they've done that in the University of Waterloo's case is filing a $1.5 million lawsuit to try and intimidate us into ending our protests and giving up those charter rights that you just mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And the university's attempt at that really exposed them and their hypocrisy for it. And being exposed is what caused immense community pressure on the university and forced their hand, made them drop their lawsuits, and made their attempts at intimidation backfire against them. And really, that's one of the things that supported our movement the most is the university's overhanded response. And that caused us to have one of our major wins, which was the community support that we got. Community support, not just for student protesters and for freedom of expression, but community support for and solidarity for the people of Gaza. And I think that's was one of our biggest successes. Is Waterloo is a small town, but we've managed to mobilize thousands and thousands of people in support of Palestine. And at the end of the day, one of our major goals was trying to get the community on our side. And I think at that, thankfully, we succeeded a lot. And we want to keep using that community support, keep using the organization that we used to continue pushing for our demands and continue calling on the university.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Nadine, have you at any time felt that you were threatened and that there is so much at stake here that your ambition and your plans for the future have been to some extent compromised? Did you ever feel that? And it seems like it did not matter much to you, these things, but did you or did you not? go through some of these empuzzlement, I would say, of feeling that you are not allowed to exercise your right to protest and to voice your concerns.
Yeah, well, uh, for that, like in the injunction, the university did name like a few of the students, mainly the students involved in media, and they, like three of our organizers have been doxxed on the Canary mission. They get death threats every single day. Something that the university is really good at is trying to intimidate us. It's like their main tactic of silencing us. But like what they don't understand is like every time they try to silence us, like we just get louder, we get more stronger, and we come back angrier and with more energy than ever. And I guess like on a more personal level, like the main thing I worry about is just like when I do go back home to visit my family, if being involved in the organizing, it's like not accepted at all. But I try to make the best of it, and I try to remain as safe as possible and with my identity every now and then. And then also something that really supported us was the injunction where the university tried to frame us as anti-Semitic, as violent, as hateful. The judge came back and basically told them your arguments are all baseless. They stand no ground. This is not a violent protest. These are peaceful students, and this is a peaceful action. And even said that the slogans that we use, like from the river to the sea, are not anti-Semitic slogans. And just having this in the Canadian court system is something very important for the Palestinian movement. And it just shows and it makes a joke out of the university. Like you are really out here. They brought bomb squad after we left their circle because they thought they see us as terrorists. In their eyes, we are violent creatures, even though we're here protesting to end the genocide. And the court system supported us and showed them that no, what you're saying is completely incorrect, and these are peaceful students. But we failed to prove the Private Property Act, which is very unfortunate. But still, like every single battle we have, we are able to turn the table around and bring more light onto the movement, the Palestinian movement, and showing how it is simply a humanitarian thing where we're fighting for right and justice and peace for all. And slowly, slowly, we're getting closer to that goal.
Well, to his credit, that judge,
Yeah.
he even praised you. He says these are ideal students, and
Yeah.
these are idealists, and these are concerned, committed people.
Yeah.
And he refused the argument of the university that you have disrupted or you have been anti-Semitic. I think this is a real important a feather in your cap, is that those who were to judge you and were under pressure to judge you negatively refused. And on the contrary, reasserted, reconfirmed that what you're doing is noble and what you have done has really, in the very spirit and consistent with the values of education and what the university is all about. Let me tell you, I mean, I speak on my behalf, but I speak for the community and for the large constituency of people who work for peace and justice, that what you have done has been a major success. You would not have been here had you not been at the forefront of the struggle towards bringing justice and peace to the Middle East and to the world, because the world is interconnected. It's not to be separated, east, west, middle, or north or south. The world, as we said, and what you have in great expense have really established, is the collective humanity that binds you together. And what you have done, you have succeeded. And I'm really very happy that we have conducted this short 1 hour. It passed like a breeze, but we will bring you again. And would like to, on behalf of the Arabic Hour, to thank you for that noble stand and for that dedication and for that steadfastness and unyielding commitment to justice, peace, and the integrity of a human life. Thank you, Nadine. Thank you, Hamad. Thank you, Ahmed. And looking forward more sessions like this. It's been illuminating, and I'm sure our audience would feel the same, that you brought in aspects and positions and arguments that are solid and are based on very lofty and great principles that we should invite all our audiences and other people to reconfirm and to adhere to. So thank you, and we'll meet you again.
Inshallah.